Welcome to Kingdom Truth with me, Apostle Marquita Brooks, CEO and founder of Kingdom Wealth LLC. Today, we're going to talk about Babylon and disparity. But I want to set up our purpose and our commitments before we get into this topic. The purpose of Kingdom Truth is to help incite economic equity in the United States by revealing the truth according to the Bible and seeking God for strategies. Now, let's look at what equity is. Equity is the quality of being fair and impartial. The term equity refers to fairness and justice and is distinguished from equality. Whereas equality means providing the same to all, equity means recognizing that we do not all start from the same place and must acknowledge and make adjustments to imbalances. This is very important for our discussion today and all discussions we'll be having on Kingdom Truth. Our guiding principles are honoring God and seeking Him for His will in all things, committing to the Bible as our political standard, coming out of the right and left politically, walking into the aisle, right in that narrow path, to meet God at the altar, where we sacrifice ourselves on His altar for His holy fire to fall and empower us for His will to be done in the United States and throughout the earth. We want to align with the kingdom of God first, not idolizing or demonizing any individuals. See, we're not focusing on them. We're remaining factual and only operating in the truth, even in the comments. I know you guys are going to comment on this. You might share it, you might post it. Let's remain factual and only operate in the truth. And also, we want to make sure that we're making judgments only of actions, not people, operating in love and honor. And so let's get into this topic, talking about Babylon and disparity. It's very important because I've shared with you guys, this is a year of acceleration. And we saw that, of course, when President Trump came into office, immediately he starts signing executive orders on day one. He's moving rapidly. We see things changing quickly throughout the world. And so we understand that our enemy, who is Satan, he is operating rapidly. But our God is moving even faster. And he is on his throne, but also at work rapidly in the earth, in our lives. And so I want to share some things with you that as Americans, we've got to address. We've got to look at these things, this ugly disparity elephant that is in the room that nobody's talking about and nobody's looking at. As a business owner, a ministry leader, I'm also a Class A contractor and have been for years. Like, I understand what it's really like building businesses, building organizations, trying to leave a legacy of generational wealth, pulling oneself out of economic challenges and moving forward, and what needs to happen in our nation in order to empower more people to get into a better economic situation, which is a blessing for us as a nation. And so I want to talk to you guys today about some executive orders that have been written by President Trump since he's been in his second term. Like I told you, he's taken off running. And so we want to look at these. I encourage you to really read the language of executive orders and bills that are, proposed and bills that are being passed. Read the language. Don't read all the commentary and all the editorials, everything everybody else is saying, because there's slants to all of that. You need to be in God's presence, talking to Him about His standard, what He's doing in the earth, and then reading the actual language in the executive orders, in the bills, so that you can go back, have a conversation with God, and ask Him how He would empower you to move forward. And so I want to share a few things with you. Like I said, we're going to look at 4 of these executive orders. 3 of them were written within the first 3 weeks of President Trump's second term, but there's one that was written last month, and that's the one I want to look at a little bit of the language and really talk about, disparity, equity, and this principality of Babylon, which we cannot not look at. So there's these 3 that were written: ending radical and wasteful government DEI programs and preferencing, reforming the federal hiring process and restoring merit to government service, ending illegal discrimination and restoring merit-based opportunity. Those 3 were the ones that were written in his first 3 weeks, some of them like in the first week of his second term. But then this one was written in April, restoring equality of opportunity and meritocracy. And really, it has language in it that the other 3 have. I've read the other 3 as well. And this language can be encouraging in saying, oh, we're all going to have this equal opportunity, which is exactly what it says in the executive order, but it does not address disparity. And that's, I told you, we got to look at that ugly disparity elephant in the room. And we also want to see how is this affecting not just our national policies, but our international policies, because it's happening now. And so Section 1 begins of this particular executive order. It says purpose, and that's what we're going to read is the purpose. A bedrock principle of the United States is that all citizens are treated equally under the law. This principle guarantees equality of opportunity, not equal outcomes. It promises that people are treated as individuals, not components of a particular race or group. It encourages meritocracy, meaning, merit-based accomplishments and opportunities, and a colorblind society, not race or sex-based favoritism. Adherence to this principle is essential to creating opportunity, encouraging achievement, and sustaining the American dream. Okay, so let's look at some challenges here. That language and the language in all four of these executive orders does not in any way acknowledge the disparity that certain individuals in the United States, and of course we see this all over the world, actually, deal with the challenges and adversities that come with, ground zero life. Day one, walking on the earth or living on this earth, and then day one in the job market, day one trying to build a business. The disparities between various groups of individuals, various people groups, not just based off of race and ethnicity, but really there's a huge economic disparity, which isn't always confined to racial and ethnic groups. We see economic disparities being the greatest line between us in the United States, actually. It's actually always been the greatest line. Even coming from England and France, like there was an economic disparity that came, that economic disparity came with those who became the colonists here. There was a hierarchy of groups, and that continues to exist here in the United States, and that division is economic division. We see more poverty, in disproportionate numbers in groups of Black and brown people, absolutely. But the dividing line really is economics. It's really finances. And so what we want to understand here is that though the stated purpose is to actually, focus opportunities on merit, people who are able to do the job, qualified experience, all of that. Again, it doesn't address the disparities. And this is, of course, what all the DEI executive orders were trying to address was disparities, because there are disparities. And I can tell you, in ministry, being a business coach and being a contractor, that opportunities are not equally given, because everything that happens in this world happens through people. And people have a lot more discretion than we're willing to acknowledge oftentimes. And so people tend to give opportunities to people who are like themselves. And like I said, this is not just about, race and ethnicity. This is really about economics. And so for people who are starting off economically disadvantaged, the likelihood of them getting opportunities from people who come from an economically advantaged group is very small. And you see this in business opportunities, you see this in education, you see this everywhere, because the reality is every opportunity we have, every resource we have is stewarded by humans who are looking at other humans and evaluating them based off of their own paradigms from their own life experiences. Automatically, that creates a system of disparity just because people are involved. And so when you remove all the measures that address some of those disparities, what you inherently do is put back disparities and even more. You actually add even more disparities, because now what we're doing is pretending like they don't exist. We can't do that. Now, let me tell you why this is important and why this is on God's heart and why he's having me speak about it right now. I firmly believe, having had conversations with the Lord about this, because he had to talk to me, he talks to me, and he was really talking to me about what he's doing through this second term of President Trump. The Lord himself promised us in the scriptures that he was going to bring down the principality of Babylon. You see it in Revelation chapter 18. It's coming down, and it's going to come down. And the principality of Babylon, I do whole teachings on this, very extensive teachings on it. But Babylon creates economic systems that cause certain people to flourish and do well, but on the backs of others. So any nation, any kingdom that has ever been fueled by this Babylonian principality, which we first see, of course, in the Empire of Babylon, hence its name. Um, but after that empire, ceased to exist, that principality continued through lots of kingdoms and empires and nations, basically making certain people rich at the disadvantage of other people, creating, underclasses and really impoverishing some to enrich others. The United States was established that way. Not God's will. It wasn't God's will, but it was the will of the people. Remember, I told you, opportunities and resources in the hands of humans, flawed humans. And so even though Reverend Hunt was a part of the first group of English settlers to come to the United States. I'm from Virginia. I live in Virginia. I know that history very well. Everybody else on that boat was coming here to get money. They were seeking wealth. That was what all the sailors were seeking. And when they almost died, headed here to the Americas, and were lost at sea, Reverend Hunt said, "Let's fast, let's pray, and seek God." And then they arrived at the shores here, originally at Virginia Beach. Then it came up to Point Comfort, which is out of Hampton, and then made the first permanent English settlement in Jamestown. And there's so many prayers, and there's this biblical history. But please understand that the original colonists wanted wealth. They came here for wealth. They were sent here from their countries to build wealth. The Virginia Company was about building wealth. Like, it was always about building wealth. And there was this exchange with this Principality of Babylon. We will push certain people down to make sure that we build wealth, whether it was the Native Americans who were here, those First Nations people who were God's stewards over the land, who had communities, nations, confederations already established. We even borrowed from those to write our Constitution. And so there was an organized groups of peoples already here. But if building up our economic system is to their disadvantage, so be it. If it's to the disadvantage of Africans, bring them over here enslaved, so be it. This is what Babylon does. And though we don't see those things in perpetuity, though there's certainly still persecution against First Nations by the United States government right now, still happens. It's not discussed much, but it does still happen. Certainly we see disparities and challenges within the African American population that are a result of slavery, absolutely still prevalent. But though the original institutions that perpetrated a lot of the challenges no longer exist, there are residual effects to all types of people, even immigrants who've come to the United States later. There's so many residual effects of this economic disparity and inequity, that I would call it, that we've got to address as a nation if we really do want to say we're providing equal opportunities. Now, this is important. The reason this is important is because, like I said, the Lord has been talking to me. And what he revealed to me is that his desire is for the Trump administration during this second term of President Trump to address Babylon. That's what all of the draining the swamp is about, removing the wasteful spending, pulling out agendas that have been interwoven into government policies, and even our social interactions, agendas that really are destructive at their end. Spoken of as civil rights and healthcare and all these other covers for these type of agendas. They build up an industry, billion-dollar industries that destroy people's lives. And so in order for Babylon to be addressed, those type of agendas have to be removed, all of that. It's very important, and this is on God's heart, and this is what we see happening on a surface level with removing some of the DEI policies and just getting rid of DEI. We see some of these agendas that have been woven in and connected with those things that were to address the disparities. We see those agendas being hit, and they should be, because they came in with Babylon. They're destructive to all of us, and they really will take this nation down. However, what's not being addressed that the DEI policies initially were supposed to address was the disparity between Americans and in the American experience. There's huge disparities. And it doesn't matter if you've got the same education and you've got the same experience and you've got the same skills, there are still disparities. And it's important that we as Americans recognize that and stop pretending that the elephant doesn't still exist and he's not just walking around the room stomping on people, because he is. We see actually in the month of April, 106,000 Black American women lost their jobs. Now, this caused the rate of unemployment for African American women to rise by 1% in 1 month. That's insane. Like that is just, it's unheard of. That's because the disparities are now not being addressed. And African Americans, I'm an African American woman, it's a double minority. And so if you're not addressing disparities, truth is people like me get hit hardest because we're actually a part of two of the groups that hit those disparities. I'm actually part of a third group as well. But when you say that, when you realize that, you realize that is something we have to address. And so I want to encourage you as believers to not see this as a leftist issue, a rightist issue, or a conservative or a liberal issue, or a Republican or a Democratic issue. I want you to see it as a kingdom issue because we do have to come together and we have to address Babylon. Absolutely needs to happen. Babylon must come down. But we cannot address Babylon by pretending that the effects of the Babylonian system that was established don't still exist. Institutions may not still exist, but the effects of those institutions very much do. And we as believers have to walk in truth. We have to speak truth. We have to live truth. We have to stand on truth. And we do so in love. This is not pointing the fingers at any individual. It's not demonizing anybody, and it's not idolizing anybody. Nobody's our savior, and nobody's single-handedly going to destroy this nation, not even President Trump. But God himself is on the throne, and he has a will for this nation. But he's calling us to rise up and to come together and to look at some real truths. And when it comes to economics, we've got to address the truth. We absolutely have to. And so I want to encourage you to first be in prayer that the Lord would deliver you from the principality of Babylon. There's lots of scriptures about Babylon. Daniel chapter 7 starts by talking about this lion with wings torn off, and then it gets given the heart of a man. And what's important to recognize is that that's the principality of Babylon. And what does it? It woos people by the desires of our hearts, telling us it can give us anything at a price. That's what Babylon does. But it sells certain people out so that other people can get whatever they want for whatever price. Like this is why what you see in the Sean Diddy Combs trial. Like he lived this lifestyle where he felt like he get whatever he wants. And so these atrocities are coming forth in these testimonies. It's just, oh, it's terrible, it's disgusting. Of this lifestyle of a person who's just been feeding their flesh. Why? Because they could. Because they had all this money, all this time, all these resources, all this availability to just do whatever they wanted to do. And what happened occurred on the backs of somebody else. It was a destruction to someone else. That's Babylon. That's absolutely how Babylon works. Just to give you an example. And you see in Revelation chapter 18, it traffics in everything, even the bodies and souls of men. And this is very important because human trafficking comes out of Babylon. Like this is where we see Babylon thriving and working because somebody wants to feed their flesh and they're willing to do it to the destruction of somebody else. And so I want to encourage you to read those. Read chapter 18 where Babylon falls. Read chapter 19 where everybody is excited about Babylon falling. Everybody who is in the kingdom is excited, but the merchants are crying. And in chapter 19 is where it talks about that it traffics in the bodies and the souls of people. It traffics in everything, including the bodies and souls of people. And then I want to encourage you to pray for our president, for President Trump, because we know he is a billionaire. He's absolutely had dealings with Babylon. It's not possible to earn that type of money and not have dealings with Babylon. The challenge is you can't address a spirit that you have anything in common with. You must be delivered first. That's why I'm telling you to pray for your deliverance from Babylon. I pray for my deliverance from Babylon every single day. We can't grow up in Babylon. The United States has been, the reigning principality has been Babylon for a long time. I can't grow up in Babylon, haven't been trained by Babylon, and think it hasn't affected me. It absolutely has. And so I pray for my deliverance. I pray for other people's deliverance. Pray for your president's deliverance. If you're an American, I know some of y'all are like, he's not my president. Yes, he is. He is. The Bible tells us to honor those in authority. He absolutely is. And he's representing you in everything that he does. And so you want to pray for him. The Bible tells us to lift up holy hands in prayer, especially for those who are in leadership. Doesn't matter if you voted for them or if you like them. And if you do like them and you voted for them and you think they're the best things to slice bread, ask God to show you how he sees them so that you can thank him for their strengths. And you can also pray concerning their weaknesses. It's our responsibility as believers, you guys. It's not about being right or left. It's about being a kingdom citizen. And so I want to encourage you to pray for him. Because, like I said, he's had dealings with Babylon. And right now, Babylon is trying to woo him. And this is how that works. He's fighting against Babylon. He's trying to take these Babylonian agendas down, but he's had influence from Babylon over the course of his life. And now Babylon is trying to woo him with private jets from Saudi Arabia. So he will no longer stand with Israel. Private meetings with Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates and Qatar, and Israel is not there. Bringing only the American hostage out of Gaza and making those type of deals, but leaving all these Israelis still behind. It's not how he was operating 3 weeks ago, a month ago. He started out differently. What's happening? He's being wooed. And this is very important. We recognize this. None of us are above that. This flesh is very weak. And I told you what Babylon does. It finds out what you want. What do you like? I'm going to give it to you at a price. What's the price? Let's make a deal. That's Babylon. I want to encourage you to pray for him because these disparities in the United States are a real challenge and they have to be addressed. They absolutely have to be addressed. We cannot keep pretending like there are not huge disparities in the United States and that current bills, policies, executive orders aren't creating greater chasms and disparities because they are. We've got to address that economically. But we also need to realize that our relationship with Israel is one of the major factors in God's judgment toward us. Are we on the side of the kingdom or are we not? When we stand with Israel, God blesses this nation, and every time we go against Israel, some horrible atrocity happens in our nation. 9/11, Katrina, everything that happened in this nation that was horrible in contemporary times since Israel has been a nation has happened right after we forced Israel to give up land for peace, or we really stopped standing with Israel. We pressured Israel into our agenda instead of that which was best for Israel. Why? Because Israel is the apple of God's eye, and he has used Israel to reveal his standards to the whole world. The Bible came through Israel. The Messiah came through Israel. The patriarchs and matriarchs of the Bible came through Israel so that God would reveal to us what his standard is in the earth. Israel is important to him. Israel is very important to him. Our Messiah is coming back to Israel to rule the world from there. And so if our president is wooed into compromising concerning Israel, not only will we see even more of these challenges, the disparities, the different groups backed up into their corners. This group's over here and this group's over there, and everybody's pointing fingers at each other, and nobody's working together for solutions. Not only will we see more of that, but we'll start to see certain things in this nation collapse because they're already on weak foundations. We'll start to see it. We'll also see the enemies of Israel, who are also the enemies of the United States, rise up against us. I know we think that we can't be touched, but we have been. We were touched on 9/11. We were touched at Pearl Harbor. The United States is not beyond reproach. We are not untouchable. If God steps back and tells us, go ahead, do what it is, whatever it is you want to do, go ahead and do it. And he steps back because we've stepped away from him, we will see more than we bargained for, and it will happen quickly because this is the year of acceleration. And so pray for your deliverance from Babylon. Pray for your president's deliverance from Babylon. Keep your eyes open to what's happening in the earth, but even more so, keep your heart open to what God is saying. Listen to him. Let him minister to you so that you can come out of the right and out of the left and come into the aisle and meet him at the altar. Because before we are anything else, we're kingdom citizens. That citizenship should help guide us in our American citizenship. Kingdom first. I hope that blessed you. Whenever the Lord tells me to, I'll come back to you again with more kingdom truth.